Hi guys, Atlantic Renewables again, back with another video. So for once, Billy's not abandoned me, so he's back on the camera today. So today we're going to talk about optimizers, microinverters, and sort of when you use them, when you need them. I'm Jack Atherton, Associate Director and Design Engineer at Atlantic Renewables.
I'm Billy Wright, also Associate Director and in the engineering team with Jack.
So yeah, let's crack on. So I'll explain initially about why you would use both of them or either of them, and then we'll break it down into what each one's do. So the application for optimizers and microinverters typically are in scenarios where the roof or your panels are going to have shading conditions or different generation conditions. So one of the key principles of solar is that if the panels are in a string together, they perform to the worst performing panel in that string. So what optimizers and microinverters look to do is to mitigate this problem, design it out. So let's say you've got either 3 different roofs pointing in different directions and you want to combine the panels onto a single MPPT because you need a certain amount of panels to kick up voltage enough to start the inverter going. Then if you were having some panels facing east and some of them facing west, the west panels in the morning are going to be producing very little or nothing compared to the east panels, and so this difference in generation would effectively knock out that string. So by adding these pieces of kit in, they solve that problem. But again, things like shading conditions, if there's sweeping shade across the array, again that creates a panel that performs less well than its neighbours. And any other examples?
So like mess from birds and things like that,
Yeah.
or even like unexpected damage from pigeons and things like that can reduce it. But yeah, mainly it's shading from trees,
shading,
chimneys,
orientations,
like that,
and then any kind of damage as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are the use cases. These are why these pieces of kit exist. So I've kind of highlighted that structure. I'll hand over now to Billy to kind of cover the use cases of Optimisers specifically. So we're going to talk sort of SolarEdge and Tigo, the main one we use. But yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, so as you say, they're not typically installed with the basic systems. It's when there is shading problems from chimneys, trees, flues, other neighbouring buildings and things like that, which isn't for everybody. But when we do see something that could cast a shadow in a specific area of the solar array, we try and take action with these either optimizers with SolarEdge or Tigo. SolarEdge is typically, it is the full optimized system, so every single panel on that system will have an optimizer, and you get the central inverter with SolarEdge as well. So there's the benefits with the monitoring. You can see what every single panel is doing at any given time, and as you say, the panels they're connected in parallel now rather than in series in a big string. So they work on their own. So if panel A was working at 50% efficiency due to a shadow from a tree, the one next to it would still work at 100% if that was cleared of the shade. If you didn't have them optimizers, all the panels in that string would drop because they're all being connected in series. So that's what we look at if there is sort of a shading
the
problems.
output would drop rather than completely stop.
Oh yeah, they won't completely stop. Yeah, what I'm saying, if there was a 30 or 40% drop in efficiency of one panel, then everyone in that string would drop by that same amount because they're all in series. So yeah, it's something that we look at earlier on just to see do all of the solar panels on the system need protecting, or is it just certain panels? If you've got 10 panels, for example, and only 1 or 2 of them needed to be protected because of a chimney in a certain area, we'd look at Tigo, because Tigos don't have to be on every single one, they can just be on certain panels. Whereas if you wanted to optimise the full system, that's when SolarEdge would step in, really.
And so you've covered one of the key points there is that with the Tigo system, you don't have to put them on every panel.
No, just to highlight, you can isolate areas.
It makes that solution more cost effective than SolarEdge.
SolarEdge
is a higher cost system anyway, but because you're having to also optimize every panel, that's one of the reasons why it does come in at a slightly higher price. But they are quoted as standard on sort of government and hospital projects and schools and things like that, because they are sort of AAA safety rated. That's because you can basically isolate the panel down to the panel level and turn it down to 1 volt at the roof level. So, safety wise, they have the edge on that respect. but also their reporting, isn't it? That you can see on the app down to the panel level.
Every single panel, yeah.
Yeah, so for those data nerds out there, a little bit like me, I could check how well each panel was performing, certainly.
Yeah.
Facilities that you don't get as standard with the Tigos.
Nope.
So do you want to talk about the Cloud Connect a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So Tigo, again, you can have them just on their own. So you can have, if you've got 10 panels, you could have 1, 2, maybe 3 of the panels with Tigos, or you could have all 10. With the Tigos as standard, they don't have that monitoring, as you mentioned with SolarEdge. So SolarEdge, you're getting every single panel right down to the individual modular sort of element. You can see what everything's doing. Tigo, you don't have to have that, but you can opt to go for that with the Cloud Connect. So it's an extra bit of kit that we can install, and essentially it is that monitoring platform. It's online monitoring for those panels that we've optimized, whether it be every panel or just the 2 or 3 or 4 that we've chosen. The benefit with SolarEdge is you know what's going on as standard. You can see on my phone or iPad or computer what everything's doing. And with the Tigos, you can isolate those panels, but you can't monitor it that way. The monitoring is still in those 2 strings.
Unless you get the Cloud
Unless
Connect.
you get the Cloud Connect, yeah. The Cloud Connect just gives you that sort of peace of mind that you can see what's going on.
Yeah.
As you say, how often you're going to check that in the future is everyone's a bit different. Some people just don't want to even look, but others really want to heavily monitor it. So
another thing to defend Tigo is that you can actually, I think you can integrate them in the SIG Energy app now.
You
can
read
the Tigo outputs on your SIG Energy app.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
So that's another good feature of them. So yeah, we've covered kind of both the main features there. Warranty-wise, SolarEdge, I believe it's 25 years for
25 years for the Optimiser,
Yeah.
And 12 year for the actual inverter unit as well.
You
which
can
is
expand
high.
it on
and
that.
you can expand it, so 20 years if you want.
Yeah, so
it's quite high. They're the highest warranty periods for products. SolarEdge, they're really high.
Yeah, and so, I mean, not just sort of the warranty period, but they are quite good at honouring it. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've had a couple
Yeah.
that have failed over the years. We've been installing SolarEdge for 8-9 years now, and thousands probably of actual Optimisers. We've had a couple of them fail, and yeah, as soon as we notice that it's gone down, which you can do because you've got that monitoring, you can speak to the manufacturer and they'll send a replacement straight out. And well, how easy it is to swap is every project's different, but they do always honour that warranty. Yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of neatly leading on to the disadvantages of these sorts of systems. So you're obviously now installing extra bits of kit underneath the panel on the roof level. So whilst they have a fairly low failure rate, as we've already said, it's not a 0 failure rate, and at some point one of them may go. In which case then we need to get back up onto the roof. We need to lift the panel. With SolarEdge it's easy, we can tell exactly which panel, if it's been set up properly. If the installer sets it up properly, we can tell exactly which panel it is on the roof, and we can make we can make a beeline for that one to fix that specific one. However, with Tigo, we know one of them's gone down, and then you have to track which one of those. Hopefully that's been noted properly as well, but it's one of 2 in that, or one of however many Tigos there are in that respect.
Yeah, that's the problem if you get the Tigos without the monitoring. If one of them drops, you don't know which one. So it can be tricky to find. But
some of our previous customers have elected to put the Optimisers inside the loft, so underneath the panels.
The back of the rafters.
Again, not an option for everyone who has like converted lofts or things like this, but so that's a solution which people have employed, but it is more labour time. There is an added cost to that as well. But maybe it makes sense given the context of the job, like you say. These are typically employed at times when there's tricky install conditions that sort of simple high volume installers would kind of walk past because it's not so easy. But whereas we take the time and we make the solar panels happen on more complicated projects. So if we're talking about these bits of equipment, then maybe these sort of solutions should be in the mixer anyway.
It's right. It's a big part of the design as well. So we'd only install these Optimisers if necessary, if there is those shading problems, because it's technically a possible point of failure. So if we're going to fit them, it means that it's really having an impact on the performance. It's going to really benefit the system, and it will be a worse performing system without, if that makes sense. But again, it's a point of failure, so it's something to design as well as we can to access them in the future.
So then, just to dive into it a little bit more. How the Optimisers actually work is they modulate the DC energy coming out the panel. So it's still direct current when it comes out the panel,
Mm-hmm.
which is important because this is very useful in systems where you sort of have a hybrid system where the battery is sort of integrated in with the solar inverter. This is more efficient because you're not doing that AC to DC to AC conversion and then sending it back to a battery which wants it in DC again. So you then have to double invert it. Yeah. So if you're keeping your power in DC, this isn't a more electrically efficient way of doing it using the Optimisers, which is another factor. They're compatible with most installers. I think Tesla's the main one I think that you couldn't use Tigos with.
Tesla's the only one I'm aware of. Yeah. It just doesn't allow optimization.
They don't like it. Or maybe they're playing a Tesla Optimiser or something. Who knows? But like I say, you can already onboard it with the SIG Energy ones, and so yeah, keeping the DC power is more electrically efficient if you're viewing this as a larger system with a battery involved, as opposed to the way that microinverters would do, which I'll get onto into a second. So yeah, just to summarise then, sort of the Optimiser version. The Optimiser is attached to each panel underneath the panel, so you never actually see it. And they optimize the DC power. So they're making the most of the solar that's being generated rather than adding any more generation capability. And it still relies on a central inverter setup. So you still have your DC cables running off to a central inverter, typically in a more accessible place, which you can then monitor that better. And so again, with SolarEdge, you can monitor that through the app properly, and you can get to that inverter easier. Whereas if you weren't doing that, you have to go up onto the roof to get to these sort of things. So there's a long sort of maintenance considerations towards the other version. But again, I'll touch on that in a bit more depth.
Yeah, much more efficient if you've got that battery, just because it stays DC and only gets converted to AC if you really need it. Yeah.
I mean, the final things to touch on, we alluded to it previously, but SolarEdge's safety features are sort of industry leading.
Yep.
You can shut down, you can rapidly shut down the panel generation at the panel level, so you've basically made that system as safe as possible. I mean, you can have the rapid fireman switches. Again, that's one thing that we use a lot in sort of schools and hospitals. Install it, and sites akin to that in the past. So, So I'll now take a little bit of time to discuss the microinverters, which run a slightly different way. So, where Optimisers keep the power DC and spit it out back towards the central inverter, microinverters do the role of the inverter but underneath each panel. So we'll take Enphase as an example here because they're one of the leading manufacturers. I believe Octopus only quotes Enphase and Tesla, so
that's correct.
Yeah, they've clearly got a good gig there. But what the microinverters do is they do that DC to AC conversion underneath the panel, and they send the AC out back towards. Again, if you don't have a battery, then it's straight back to your board and used by the house. Whereas if you have an Enphase system with a battery, you're essentially inverting the power from DC to AC, sending it back down to some more microinverters somewhere downstairs near a battery, which then flip it back into the battery in DC. Then when you want to use that power, it's then flipped again.
Changes again.
Yeah. So
conversions.
By minimizing the conversion amount, that's a negative with microinverters. So the positives are they can be installed with much less space taken up. Sort of again, if you were going without a battery system, you would need not much equipment at all really downstairs.
No, you'd have the sort of little controller. But there's no actual central unit with the Enphase. It's all they're all microinverters under the panels on the roof. So,
again, in situations where you have the shading condition problems, or you have the obstacles, or you have the multiple different orientation roofs, and if you have limited space available in the loft area, or in fact in anywhere in the house, then
whole property,
that's another great perk of the microinverter system. So, and another positive of the microinverter, because you're moving AC is a lot safer to move. AC electricity, much more safer to move through the house than DC. So again, that's another sort of safety aspect to it.
Little to no DC cable.
So cost-wise, I believe when we looked at Enphase a while back now, as Atlantic Renewables, we haven't done too many Enphase installations. Kind of, we stand by this sort of central inverter model when we're installing. When we've costed up Enphase, it does come out typically a little bit more expensive than the central inverter way. But one thing that we didn't really touch on with Optimisers previously is that expandability of projects. So if you had a system already installed and you want to add a few more panels on, you could try and put another few panels on with Tigo Optimisers, but you're really dependent on how well they strung the initial central inverter.
And how big that inverter is as well.
Exactly. Whereas in a microinverter setting, if you build another roof, or for whatever reason you want to expand your project, then you just use more of the same microinverters and put that onto the system. So expandability, you are sort of, that tick does tend to go towards the sort of microinverter setup in sort of a chart of who wins this, but you're beginning to see that actually the two bits of kit, whilst they do similar jobs, are actually used in very different use cases. And so when you're working with Atlantic Renewables, we'll kind of advise you either way which one makes sense. Like we say, we have a predisposition towards the central inverter setup because it is slightly more practical to install,
slightly more efficient.
Maintenance wise in the future it's better, and sort of electrical efficiencies does work out that way.
Yep.
One other thing to note is that the Enphase modules, at least the IQ8s I believe are the latest versions,
the latest ones.
Their maximum wattage conversion tends to be lower than the maximum wattage out on the panels at the moment now.
Clipping.
Yeah, so you're essentially guaranteeing some clipping at the microinverter level. Now that is possibly true as well on a central inverter system, but you have to have far more panels to experience that. So again, this is it's so site specific, this argument that but typically you're kind of guaranteeing a certain amount of electrical loss with the microinverter setup that you're possibly not with the Optimiser, or absent of both solution here.
Yeah, just for like the peak of summer, if it was a south-facing pitched roof, and if you had them Enphase microinverters on, there'll be a little bit of a loss when the panels are generating at max output, which is not good. You pay for the panel, you want to get the most out of it. Won't be the case with this the string system if it was sized accordingly, but
exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
We discussed warranties with SolarEdge, so it's only fair that Enphase get to defend themselves. They're 25 years as well. So again, if an Enphase microinverter goes down, it's only that panel that drops out. Same with the Tigos as well. So again, it's hard to sort of split them on that respect.
So the warranty as well, very similar to you mentioned with the Optimisers. If one of those fails, you can see which one it is on the app straight away. But you have to get up there and lift the panel up and switch it. If it was the central inverter, there's only one point of failure there. So if that goes, you can swap it out straight away and you can access it.
And Enphase claim the failure rate of their microinverters is 1 in 2,000. But if we were installing Enphase all day, every day, we would guarantee one failure a year at least with those sort of numbers. So it's not so infrequent it never happens. So it's something to build into our considerations. I mean, again, we've covered the use cases for both at this point. We've covered the pros and cons. Have you got any, when you're quoting customers, have you got any preference leaning either way?
I prefer the SolarEdge system. Definitely, if you've got shading problems, it's definitely best to optimise those panels and have the monitoring. The monitoring is important. Unless we were doing, for example, like if we had a 10 or 11 panel system and only one of the panels was really affected by shade due to a little chimney or a flue or something, one Tigo could make sense. But typically if there's a big tree or a chimney or even a neighbouring building or something, then SolarEdge just makes the most sense. It's efficient with the DC. You get the full monitoring. You can have the DC coupled battery with it as well, so there's no conversions to AC, which is a drop in efficiency. I do like Enphase. It works very similarly, but it's just that DC to AC, AC to DC again, that lack of efficiency and that clipping element. The clipping is just the wattage of the panels is 475, 480 at the moment with the ICOs, the all black panels. It's around 400 watts for the microinverters.
420, I believe.
420. So in the peak of summer, there will be a bit of a loss. Again, subject to the orientation. And
unless your panel's pointing in the wrong direction or the wrong inclination, which case then.
Subject.
But so, like I say, there's very asterisks to this whole thing. But if you had the optimum panel, I wouldn't be putting an Enphase on the optimum orientation panel.
SolarEdge as well. They have the monitoring is great. You've got the WhatsApp chat as well, so you can speak to their engineers very quickly if you feel that you've got a problem.
Because you deal with a lot of faults.
I deal with a lot of faults.
Have you? I mean, we haven't had to interact with Enphases.
Never had to speak to Enphase before, no. Unless it's a customer who's got an Enphase system elsewhere and having problems with either their controller or the system's gone down, and we can investigate. But with our own customers, we've done a lot of SolarEdge, and There is a little bit of a software update needed here and there. We've had a couple of failed Optimisers which they send replacements to straight away. But yeah, they're very quick.
Tigos, have you had to interact with them too much?
Once, and that was with the Cloud Connect rather than the actual Optimisers. And that was, of course, just the Cloud Connect was like next to the router, so we could switch that out, no problem. And the Cloud Connect that's like the monitoring for it, so that was easy. But yeah, again, you can access them, speak to them. But it's probably only 5 or 10% of our customers actually go with these systems. The majority of our customers, they don't have the shading problems. If they did, we could string the systems well anyway. But it is just when there is those big trees, big shading problems that it's a big talking point. Chimneys. Usually it's like the Victorian properties, the older ones with the slate roofs. They've got those big tall chimneys and chimneys of neighbours as well, which you can't do anything about. And things
neighbours'
like that.
roofs.
Neighbours' roofs, and flues, things like that. So
We're running down an obstacle.
Yeah, of course. It's something we try and design out.
So that's covering the systems from our point of view. Hopefully you've had some useful sort of advice about how we consider these factors when designing your systems for you and with you. But again, if you had any questions, certainly if you're sort of going through a design process with us, ask us, why haven't you gone for this or this? We can fully sort of contextualise why it doesn't make sense in your situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we've had a situation many times where customers have got in touch and they've said, we've been told by 3 or 4 installers that I can't have solar at all. And it's because of shading problems. And there's the customers, the other installers, they just want to have a standard system. They just want to fit Tesla, or they just want to fit Give Energy or a standard solution. We can be a bit more flexible. We can design something tailored to a property if there is those shading problems that other companies don't want to touch. So
brilliant. So thanks for listening, guys. Again, if you have any questions, post in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff.
Absolutely.
I've been Jack, and I'm not lonely this time. Billy, thanks for coming along.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.